Okay, so point M is the midpoint of each of the segments below, and we want to figure out what we notice. So in this first example, M is the midpoint. It is exactly smack dab in the middle, halfway in between points A and point B. So what makes point M be halfway between points A and point B? Well, the x-coordinate of the midpoint is 2. And the x-coordinate of point A is 0, the x-coordinate of B is 4. So what could I do with 0 and 4 to get 2? And likewise, point M's y-coordinate is 3. And 3 is exactly halfway in between 2 and 4 vertically. Between 2 and 4, halfway in between is 3. That makes sense because I go from 2 to 3 to 4. And from the x-coordinate perspective, 0 to 2 to 4 is exactly halfway in between. So we can see that if we can count by 2's in this case and by 1's in the second case, we can get to the halfway mark. All right, so let's look at another example here. Okay, we got 1 and 3 and 5, that makes sense, and 0 and 1 and 2 makes sense. But we probably need to come up with some kind of a formula that's going to help us in case we don't have these graphed and can't visualize them. Maybe that formula will come again, but again, we have to remember that we're halfway in between when we're at the midpoint. Okay, midway means halfway. All right, and then 0 and 2 have a midway point of 1, and 4 and 2 have a midway point of 3. That makes sense. We're going downhill in this case. So 0, 1, 2, 4, 3, 2. Okay. But then here, I'm going from -3 all the way to 5 horizontally. And it's not quite so easy to see how many steps I am between them. So this is where that formula might come into play. The 1, 2, 3 makes sense, but not necessarily the -3 to 5 has a 1 in between. So when you think about it, if you're halfway in between, half of something means that we're dividing by 2. So what could I do with 1 and 3 to divide by 2 and get 2? Well, 1 plus 3 is 4, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. That's the y-coordinate. And what could we do with the -3 and the 5? If I took -3 and 5 and added them up, because 5 is positive and 3 is negative, it's like saying 5 minus 3, and 5 minus 3 is 2. If I take that 2 and divide it by 2, I do get my 1. So that seems to be working. It's like we're adding the x-coordinates up and dividing them by 2. Adding the y-coordinates up and dividing by 2. Let's check it out and see if that works for this one. Ooh, we got decimals this time. Okay, so if we add the x-coordinates up, -4 and 3. -4 and 3 is a total of a -1. And if we divide that -1 by 2 to make it halfway, then we get a -1 divided by 2, and that is the same thing as -0.5. Okay, that checks. So then let's try the y-coordinates. If I take a -1 and I add a -2 to it, when they're both negative and I add them up, I'm going to give them this negative sign. So we're going to be at a -3 divided by 2, -3 divided by 2. Oh, that is -1.5. So that checks as well. -3 divided by 2 is -1.5. Okay, so let's try one more. Ooh, okay. This one's horizontal. If I take my x's and I add the -4 with the 3, -4 plus 3 is a -1, and I want to be halfway between them, so I'm dividing by 2. So it's like I'm averaging them up. I'm adding them and dividing by 2. I'm going to get a -1/2. half, negative 0.5, okay. And then if I take a 1 and I add a negative 1 to a negative 1, negative 1 and negative 1 becomes a negative 2 because they're both negative. I add them and give them a negative sign. Negative 2 divided by 2 is a negative 1, and that makes sense. That checks as well. Okay, so I think that we figured out how to find the midpoint of 2 points. We could look at it and say, oh, I'm going to go up a total of 2, and I'm going to go over a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So half of 2 is 1, and half of 8 is 4, and that could help me find my midpoint. But it's sometimes better to have a formula in case they don't provide us with graph paper. And so it looks like what we've been doing is we've been taking our x's and we've been adding them, and then we divide them by 2, and then we find the y's and we add them and divide them by 2. So we add our x's, add our y's, and then they each get divided by 2. We find the average of the x's and the average of the y's. Add the two numbers, divide by 2.